It's March 7th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with the government's response to the mass walkouts by doctors. President Yoon says that there is no choice but to respond strictly and in accordance with law and principles against those doctors who infringe on people's right to life and health. Police on Wednesday summoned and questioned the first doctor whom authorities suspect of instigating the collective action. Former UN ambassador and Republican Nikki Haley ended her White House campaign after President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump secured easy victories on Super Tuesday, paving the way for a widely expected Biden-Trump rematch. U.S. Fed Chair Chair Powell still expects rate cuts this year, but notes the Fed is not quite ready to do so yet. And stocks posted gains as it spoke, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average up more than 250 points at midday Wednesday. Steps to suspend licenses of doctors taking part in a mass walkout are in full swing now. Police summoned and questioned the first doctor, who is believed to have initiated the collective action. Our Shin Yeon starts us off.
Police on Wednesday summoned Chu So-ho, spokesperson of the Korean Medical Association Emergency Committee, for questioning over the ongoing trainee doctors' walkout. Trainee doctors in South Korea submitted letters of resignation on February 20th and stopped working to protest the government's planned increase in the admissions quota for medical schools. Before facing police questioning, Chu firmly rejected accusations made against him and argued that the collective resignation of resident doctors was a peaceful and voluntary act.
Government and civic groups who filed a complaint against us will be in for a surprise because we never encouraged a walkout. So the accusation of incitement simply doesn't hold up.
Last Tuesday, the Health Ministry lodged a formal complaint with police against 5 officials from the KMA, accusing them of multiple offenses, such as violating medical laws and disrupting business operations. Following June, next up for questioning is former KMA President No Hwang-kyu on Saturday. 3 other officials are in the process of scheduling questioning with the police. This came as some 7,000 doctors in training now face proceedings aimed at suspending their medical licenses. On Tuesday, the government began sending out advance notices about the administrative procedures facing doctors who have not returned to work in defiance of a return-to-work order. Following the issuance of the notices, doctors will have a 2-week period to submit their defense through written statements. Should the administrative actions be upheld, their medical licenses will be suspended for 3 months. Amid continuing disruption to medical services, 5 major hospitals in Seoul, including Seoul National University Hospital, said they were exploring the possibility of merging wards to enhance the efficiency of patient care. With the medical system being restructured to focus on patients with critical or emergency needs, there is a plan to treat patients with less urgent conditions in a single ward, much like the approach taken during the COVID-19 pandemic. Other hospitals across the country are also considering either not operating certain medical departments or merging wards. Shin Yeon, Arirang News.
And the government continues to stress that those who put their right to life and health at risk will be held responsible. Contingency funds are being secured to make sure emergency and essential services remain in full operation. Our Oh Soo-young reports.
There is no tolerance for doctors who neglect their duties, infringing people's rights to life and health under the Korean Constitution. That's according to President Yoon on Wednesday, as thousands of junior doctors continue their illegal boycott against the government's plan to raise the number of medical students at universities. Chairing a meeting at the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures headquarters, Yoon called on authorities to thoroughly implement measures to stabilize medical services, saying the government has some $96 million of contingency funds to ensure that emergency care and essential services remain in operation. Such measures involve a pilot project for nurses to support medical treatment, deploy military doctors, and support labor costs to recruit additional personnel. Also, Yoon said the so-called Big 5 hospitals in the country will focus on treating seriously ill patients, while local general hospitals will tend to those in less critical conditions. These measures, he said, will help stabilize the medical system amid the ongoing crisis. Addressing his cabinet ministers earlier in the day, Yoon issued a strong warning, saying the doctors have put the lives and health of citizens at risk.
의사들의 집단 행동은 스스로 책무를 져버리는 일이며 자유주의와 법치주의의 근간을 흔드는 것입니다. 국민의 생명을 볼모로 하는 불법적인 집단 행동에는 법과 원칙에 따라 엄중히 대응할 수밖에 없습니다.
Yoon said as the state is constitutionally obliged to protect the lives and health of its citizens, doctors are licensed to carry out this heavy public duty. He asserted that doctors' own rights and freedoms also come with responsibility, shooting down claims that suspending medical licenses for an estimated 7,000 partaking in the strikes infringes on their rights. At the same time, the president appeared to extend a message of reassurance. While reiterating the need for reform to the healthcare system, he pledged to spare no investment and support to raise the capacity and quality of medical schools to meet global standards, and promised to actively heed voices from the medical community. Yoon also said authorities will address the laborious sacrifices of young resident doctors, restructuring the personnel system to provide optimal support for medical staff. According to the president, since the national health insurance was first introduced in 1977, the number of doctors has only grown by sevenfold, and the number of medical students 2.2 times, despite medical expenses having spiked over 500 times. Oseong, Arirang News.
Seoul once again urged Pyongyang to end its nuclear activities, as well as its military cooperation with Moscow. South Korean ambassador to Austria, Ham Sang-wook, who was taking part in Wednesday's International Atomic Energy Agency regular board meeting held in Vienna, called on North Korea to immediately stop its illegal nuclear development and comply with the IAEA's safety measure obligations. Ham said the North is seriously undermining peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and globally by emphasizing its policy of strengthening its nuclear weapons and its constitution. Ham also said that Pyongyang's military cooperation with Moscow clearly shows that the security of the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia is inseparable from the security of Europe and the international community as a whole. The stage is set in American presidential politics for a rematch between U.S. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. For key takeaways from Super Tuesday, we turn to VOA correspondent Jessica Stone this morning. Hello there, Jessica.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's begin with former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley's exit from the Republican presidential race, which clears the way for Trump to get the Republican Party nomination. I mean, how did Haley do on Super Tuesday?
Well, she did the best that any Republican female candidate has ever done, winning 2 states in all, Vermont and the District of Columbia. She came up with 89 delegates, but unfortunately for her, former President Trump has 995 delegates at the end of Super Tuesday, and he's just a couple hundred delegates from clinching the nomination in full. We expect that to happen in just the next couple of weeks. So she did exit the race, as you mentioned, on Wednesday morning. In her speech, though, she congratulated Donald Trump, but she did not endorse him, saying, quote, "It is up to Trump to, quote, earn her supporters' votes."
Right, so clearly Super Tuesday was a good one for Trump. How did he handle the win then?
Well, he did not mention Haley at all during his speech on Tuesday night. On Wednesday morning, though, he did write this on social media, quote, "Nikki Haley got trounced last night in record-setting fashion, despite the fact that Democrats, for reasons unknown, are allowed to vote in Vermont and various other Republican primaries." Those are completely legal proceedings. There are several open primaries, 6 to be exact, on Super Tuesday, in which you can vote in a primary of your choice, no matter what party you are. So Republicans now are moving on. They're rallying around Donald Trump. We saw Senator Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader and a prominent Republican in the party, endorse Donald Trump earlier today. And Wednesday morning, the Republican National Committee called him the presumptive nominee. This clears the way for donors to move their money all into the RNC, into his pockets, as opposed to being divided with other Republican candidates for the office. And it is also key, of course, because Donald Trump is facing so many legal cases. The party has had to face whether or not it's going to pay for those legal fees and some of those fines that have already been assessed. There was an effort in the Republican Party to prevent any money from the RNC going to Donald Trump's legal fees, and that has failed.
Right. Well, what President Joe Biden is saying that there's room for Nikki Haley supporters in his campaign. He's also giving the State of the Union address on Thursday night. How will he leverage that opportunity to get reelected?
You know, it's the most airtime he's going to take this week. And in light of what happened on Super Tuesday and the very little commentary that he has given publicly about the election, this is really his opportunity to reach voters and to reach specifically those Haley voters who are hesitant to support Donald Trump. He does, though, head into the speech with one of the lowest approval ratings on record for any sitting U.S. president. An Economist poll showing that a majority of Americans in that survey say the country is on the wrong track. He's expected to talk about immigration and the economy, about how his policies have been good for the economy and how he is willing to support tough immigration enforcement. You'll recall that he did back a Senate effort a couple of weeks back to implement some new immigration reforms, and Donald Trump pressured the Republicans in Congress not to support that bill after many of them had done so. So Biden also expected to call for additional funding for Ukraine, and in light of what happened to President Zelenskyy with that near miss of that attack, that also is expected to come up. But keep in mind, his wife was invited to attend the State of the Union address by the White House, and she has declined.
Definitely. Jessica, I cannot help but point out questions over Biden. I mean, he's already the oldest sitting U.S. president. How do voters feel about Biden's age? I have to ask.
It's an important question and something that will put him in the spotlight because he is on TV essentially for at least an hour, if not more. So he will be closely watched, all of his mannerisms. And analysts say that he's going to be watched for his energy level, his vibrancies level, his vitality, stamina, control over verbal slips. We've seen him make those in the past. But, you know, he's not the only one who is taking criticism for age by the American public. An AP NORC poll shows that most American adults don't think either of these candidates, Trump or Biden, are particularly mentally capable to be president. Of course, Trump on the campaign trail has taken to slamming Biden for what he calls cognitive lapses. And just last month, a special counsel report did criticize President Biden for memory loss, for hazy and poor memory, claiming he couldn't even recall the date of his son Beau's death. That made the president very angry. He shot back very forcefully, saying his memory is just fine. But as I say, Trump has had his own slips. He appeared to confuse Republican rival Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker. And he also said that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban was the leader of Turkey. So Americans not overly thrilled by the age of these two candidates going into a general election in which they have a choice between a 77-year-old and an 81-year-old.
Right. It looks like they are on the same page here. All right, Jessica, thank you so much for the coverage today. We appreciate it.
You bet. See you soon.
Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on Wednesday once again hinted interest rate cuts are on the way amid a backdrop of economic uncertainty and concerns over a commercial real estate-driven banking crisis. Shin Se-byuk has the details.
U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has indicated potential interest rate cuts in 2024. Testifying before Congress on Wednesday, Powell reaffirmed plans to cut interest rates within the year, though he did not pin down an exact timeline.
If the economy evolves broadly as expected, it will likely be appropriate to begin dialing back policy restraint at some point this year.
Despite this, Powell adopted a cautious approach regarding rate reductions, emphasizing that the 2% inflation target has not yet been met.
But the economic outlook is uncertain, and ongoing progress toward our 2% objective for inflation is not assured.
The Fed chair also noted that the U.S. economy is showing no sign of an imminent recession, saying that restoring price stability and achieving maximum employment must come before lowering interest rates. Powell's remarks at the December 2023 FOMC meeting, which were made public in January, suggested an end to the aggressive rate hike policy the U.S. has been following. At that time, FOMC officials anticipated 3 rate cuts, each by a quarter percentage point by the end of 2024, while the actual policy path would depend on how the economy evolves. Following Powell's testimony, U.S. stocks closed higher on Wednesday, breaking a 2-day losing streak on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average saw a 0.2% rise. The broader S&P 500 index advanced by 0.5%, and the Nasdaq Composite climbed by 0.6%. Meanwhile, concerns over a U.S. banking crisis triggered by commercial real estate issues were addressed by Powell as well. This was in the context of shares in holding bank New York Community Bancorp dropping nearly 40% on Wednesday, following news that the bank had downgraded to below investment grade due to bad commercial real estate loans and was attempting to secure new funding. Powell acknowledged this as a significant challenge, but reassured that it was manageable and unlikely to impact the wider economy significantly. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
2 crew members of a cargo ship passing through the Gulf of Aden have been killed by Houthi rebels, marking the first civilian death since the group began attacking ships passing through the Red Sea. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Iran-backed Yemen-based Houthi rebels have been attacking commercial ships passing through the Red Sea since November last year in what they say is retaliation for Israel's war in Gaza. On Wednesday, these ongoing attacks resulted in the first civilian deaths. According to both U.S. and British officials, 2 crew members of a commercial ship were killed and 6 others injured in a strike by the rebel group using an anti-ship ballistic missile. The Greek-owned Barbados-flagged ship was hit approximately 93 kilometers off the coast of Yemen's port of Aden, with crew members forced to abandon the ship. A shipping industry source who spoke on the condition of anonymity said that the U.S. and Indian warships attempted to rescue the crew, but 3 remain missing. The Houthis later claimed responsibility for the attack, which U.S. officials say was their 5th missile attack in the past 2 days. A Houthi spokesman said the targeting operation came as the ship's crew rejected warning messages from Yemeni naval forces. Since November last year, the rebels have been launching drones and missiles against international commercial shipping, arguing that they're responding to Israel's war in Gaza. The attacks have disrupted global shipping, forcing shipping companies to take longer and more expensive routes around southern Africa. And despite international condemnation and a call to end hostilities in the Red Sea, the Houthis said they won't stop until the aggression is stopped and the siege on the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip is lifted. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. We begin today in Ukraine, where a Russian missile strike hit the Black Sea port of Odesa on Wednesday during a summit between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis. The attack was reportedly roughly 500 to 800 meters from the leaders, close enough for them to see and hear it. The Russian Defense Ministry said its troops successfully hit a hangar housing Ukrainian naval drones in the port. The recent attack comes a few days after 12 people, including 5 children, were killed by a Russian drone strike on Odesa. The Ukrainian and Greek leaders visited the building hit in that earlier strike to pay tribute to the victims. Zelenskyy accused Russia of not caring who they target and called Moscow a terrorist army. Moving over to Egypt, where amid an economic crisis that has gripped the country for more than 2 years, a new bailout agreement worth $8 billion was signed with the International Monetary Fund. The agreement is an expansion of a $3 billion fund facility agreed in December 2022. The deal came after the Egyptian Central Bank announced it would let its pound currency trade freely and delivered an interest rate hike of 600 basis points to stabilize the economy. As part of the new deal, Egypt will receive an additional $1.2 billion from a separate facility promoting environmental sustainability. The Egyptian economy has been severely impacted by several factors, including years of government austerity, the COVID-19 pandemic, fallout from the war in Ukraine, and most recently, the conflict in Gaza. Moving on to the situation in Haiti, where armed gangs are seeking to oust the country's Prime Minister Ariel Henry. The U.S. State Department, responding to claims that Washington was trying to persuade the Haitian Prime Minister to resign, has said that this is not the case. Rather, the State Department spokesperson said on Wednesday it's calling for Henry to expedite the transition to an empowered and inclusive governance structure that will move with urgency to help the country prepare for a multinational security support mission. The mission, backed by the United Nations but stalled for months, would aim to address the nation's security situation and pave the way for free and fair elections. The comments come after the Miami Herald had earlier reported that U.S. officials called Henry mid-flight when he was returning to Haiti via the U.S. to persuade him to step aside. In Mexico, a group of protesters demanding answers about the 43 college students who disappeared in 2014 broke down the door of Mexico's presidential palace with a truck gun Wednesday. Several demonstrators were stopped by military police before reaching the hall, where Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador was holding a news conference. A decade ago, the students' disappearance from a teacher training college shocked the country. According to Mexican government officials and United Nations reports, it led to a state cover-up and abuses during the investigation into their disappearance.
Good morning. Sunshine will hide behind the clouds again today with more wet weather in store for central regions and Gyeongsang-do areas. Right now, wet clouds are hovering around eastern parts of Korea, but will move in towards the mainland today. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-bukdo could see up to 5 centimeters of snowfall. The nearby inland regions could see 1 to 3 centimeters of snow today, so please stay safe on the roads. The capital area could see spotty showers, but all the precipitation should let up tonight. Then colder air will drop temperatures to below norms. Get ready for sub-zero morning temperatures through the weekend. Afternoon highs will be 1 to 5 degrees lower than yesterday, topping out at 8 degrees Celsius here in the capital, 10 degrees for most of southern provinces this afternoon. Meanwhile, those in Jeollado provinces could have brighter skies than other regions today. After some spring cold this weekend, we are expecting more spring-like temperatures next week with sunnier skies. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Friday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.